All right. Thanks so much to LG for sponsoring our keynote. And now let's get into our opening plenary session. I'm really excited about this one. Let me just share my screen real quickly. Okay. Our opening plenary today is the full heat pump water heater market transformation, the roadmap to 2040. We have a great panel today. Deepti Dutt from the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership will be our moderator today. She is joined by Commissioner Andrew McAllister, co-chair of the AWHI Steering Committee, Maggie, Kelley, Riggings from SEEA, Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, and Josh Greene from A.O. Smith. Please join me in giving this panel a very warm welcome. Deepti, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much all for being here.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. And I am Deepti Dutt, Manager Technology Market Transformation from NEEP, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. And a very happy heat pump water heater day to you all. And as you know, today's theme is heat pump water heater market transformation. And in this session, we're going to do a little bit of time travel. We're going to talk about the future, roadmap to 2040, and we're going to talk about the lessons learned from the past and what we are doing in the present to get there. And with that, I will share my screen to take it away from here. Sorry. Okay. So with that, well, DOE has changed the standards of water heaters, and now the electric water heaters that are above 35 gallons are no longer valid are no longer qualified. So they are going to be replaced by heat pump water heaters. So we are looking at about 3 million heat pump water heaters per year coming up. And like we have about 9 states in the country. Across the country, there are a lot of steps being taken, and about 9 states have come together to sign a memorandum of understanding that are aiming to increase their market share of heat pump water heaters to about 65%. And then there is also the EPA's climate pollution reduction grants that the New England Accelerator has won, which is 5 states from the New England, my region. I'm so proud of them that are going to work towards transforming the heat pump water heater market and achieve almost 90% of transformation by 2050. And with that, I would like to call upon our 3 transformers on the panel today, Commissioner Andrew McAllister, Maggie, Kelley, Riggins from SEEA, and Joshua Greene to talk about what are their plans for the future. Like, what is it that is encouraging them? What is the wind at their back to achieve this goal? Commissioner McAllister, do you want to go first?
I'm happy to jump in. Well, thanks so much, Deepti, and the whole team. Really lovely to join all you on this panel. And congratulations, Joe, and the whole NBI team for 5 years in the trenches, really making this happen. And it is happening. It's really quite remarkable. So happy Heat Pump Water Heater Day to everyone. I can provide testimony here that I have 2 heat pump water heaters, and one split, one unitary, and they both work fantastic, and it's just a better product. And it's really just I think the momentum will build really quickly based on the merits of that Secretary Granholm and Ram also just told us about. So it's really fabulous to be all rowing in the same direction here. So just a little bit about what California is doing. We have a lot of different levers to pull, and we're pulling them as hard as we can. I think primarily we had set a few years ago now, a 6 million heat pump goal by 2030. That includes water heating and HVAC, but heat pump water heaters really have, I think, a very clear path to scale. It's not as climate dependent as HVAC. It tends to be a little bit simpler to install in many cases. And so really, I think has the most open road going forward to really get to scale. We have, alongside that 6 million heat pump goal, we have a climate-friendly and climate-ready buildings goal, 3 million by 2030 and 7 million by 2035. That's a big goal that the governor has set for us. And heat pumps and heat pump water heaters are a really core strategy for getting to that goal for climate-friendly homes. We held the first Building Electrification Summit last October, and Josh was there, and all the major OEMs on both the water heating and the HVAC side were there. The 6 million goal came out of that summit. So hard to believe that's been a year. But what came out of that was a heat pump partnership with the world's, really the globe's major OEMs for heat pumps. And the Building Decarb Coalition is helping us coordinate that and really drive some industry consensus-based work to really identify and bust barriers, both on the, sort of behind the curtain side, the supply chain and dealing with those kinds of issues, and then also on the retail-facing side, the customer-facing side, to really figure out how to make that experience as positive as possible for the customer. So really, sort of all barriers are fair game here for the heat pump partnership to address. Also, there's a effort that's also evolving that's sponsored by the PUC. And the Investor-Owned Utilities in California, called CalMTA, Market Transformation Effort, which is making progress also towards a heat pump water heating focus. And those two efforts, the heat pump partnership and the CalMTA effort, will coordinate and build upon one another to promote heat pumps and really focus on finding those gaps and filling them. So really excited about that as well. We at the California Energy Commission, we obviously do the building code, the California Building Energy Efficiency Standards. And those are a large lever that we have to help move markets towards heat pumps. Heat pumps are inherently efficient, right? They are multiples, 3, 4 or more times more efficient than electric resistance or gas water heaters. And so they play a central role in our building energy efficiency standards, or our building energy code. So just last month, we adopted the updated code for 2025. It'll go into effect on January 1 of 2026. And it will provide a clear path for builders to build to a dual heat pump baseline. So both water and space heating being heat pumps. And so I think that will really get us to scale and help the market develop in both of those areas, but particularly on heat pump water heaters. So builders are going to be moving electric. And as Secretary Granholm said, that's roughly 80% of the on-site emissions of a home is due to those two gas end uses. And so when we switch them to heat pumps, we decrease emissions tremendously, and we get that efficiency benefit and those benefits to the customer and the homeowner. So lots of hope around the implementation of the next building code in 2026. Did want to call out also the California Air Resources Board and the leading air districts in California, particularly Bay Area AQMD and South Coast AQMD. They are really moving ahead with zero emissions requirements for water heating. And so I think that's an ongoing process of implementation at the air district level, and a regulatory process at the Air Resources Board that would be a statewide requirement. So I think the building code and those zero emissions requirements really work well together to move the market. I did want to highlight demand flexibility and the importance, the centrality really of heat pump water heaters in developing the demand flexibility ecosystem. They're one end use and many that can be modulated, but it's one that is an obvious place to really start to get broad traction and a very clear early opportunity to get load flexibility, and automated load flexibility really stood up as a resource class that can help the grid. Buildings are increasingly not just passive consumers of energy, they're active participants in the grid. And as a large load behind the meter, heat pump water heaters, or water heaters generally, can play a very core role in developing that load flexibility kind of ecosystem, and really the expectation that buildings are going to be part of the electric reliability solution. So a lot of important work there that we're doing at the state level, and absolutely in coordination with BTO and the appliance office over at DOE and a bunch of partners across the land. And then finally, I wanted to just mention programs. You know, the federal state partnerships are so important and just front and center these days. We in California just rolled out our HERA appliance rebates. So appliance rebates are now available with IRA funds for multifamily, with single family coming shortly the next couple of weeks. So you can check the Switches On website. The Building Decarb Coalition runs that for information about those rebates. We also have our state-funded Equitable Building Decarbonization Program, which will cover water heaters. That we're in the contracting of the administrators. That'll be rolling out in a few months. So EBD, we call it, Equitable Building Decarbonization. And much of the homes money, the federal IRA homes money, will go through that program as well. So we're talking like $1 billion over the next few years in building decarbonization with a strong focus on heat pump water heaters. So there's just a lot of momentum building in this direction. And so combine that with the tax credits, the extended tax credits that Secretary Granholm referred to, and you've really got sort of a multiple oars rowing absolutely hard in the same direction. And it's really going to be fantastic to watch the market embrace and develop and scale. So finally, I wanted to mention, I mentioned the last year's heat pump, or last year's electrification summit, the Building Electrification Summit. The next iteration is going to be on March 11th and 12th next year. So coming up probably quicker than we think, and save the date for that. And we'll get into these issues and many more there. So I really just appreciate the opportunity to highlight a little bit what California is doing. We have very much valued the sort of national scale of this effort, and want to be the strongest partners we possibly can, and just really lock arms with the other states and stakeholders to build markets and help achieve that decarbonization. So water heaters are a core strategy for doing that. So really appreciate you, Joe, and Deepti and the whole team there at NBI. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner McAllister. I will hold off all the Q&A questions to the end, but there's like a quick question that Luke O'Shea is asking about the progress towards the 6 million goal from the previous summit. Do we have an estimate on what's happening there?
So yeah, it's remarkably difficult to count when you haven't been counting the equipment in the past, right? So we're getting a handle on the equipment coming in, and obviously with the programs and the subsidies, we'll be able to count all of the units that come into the state, and certainly those that get a subsidy. But we think we have around 2 million in place right now across all building sectors. And so that's a good baseline to start. On the natural with the building code and sort of the normal market, if we just sort of linearly project where things are, we think we'll get to about 4 million by 2030. So we have a lot of work to do to scale up and double deployment over the next few years. We think it'll happen. It's just a better product, and we have all these. As I said, we have a lot of positive momentum building. But the 6 million heat pump goal, it's there for a reason. It's hard to get. We're gonna do our best to get it. So I think we will.
And all the very best for that. Thank you very much. Maggie, do you want to go next on what are your region's plans for a full heat pump water heater transformation? And what's the wind at your back?
Yeah, happy to, Deepti. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Kelley Riggins, and I lead the buildings work at the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. And when I'm talking about the Southeast, I work in 11 states in the Southeast mainland, but I also work in all of the U.S. islands and territories of the state of Hawaii, as well as the U.S. territories that the DOE serves. So big, broad area, but all hot, humid, right? So very, very similar building science and kind of thinking about the advantages to heat pump water heaters and other advanced technologies. I'd be remiss if I didn't say what I say every time. If any of you have already heard me talk, we're already highly electrified. We get a lot of electrification in the Southeast, especially when it comes to water heating. But right, we're looking at how we move that electric resistance to the heat pump market. If you saw my heat pump water heater video in the past, I have a 2008 GE DeoSpring hybrid heat pump water heater that is either on heat pump or vacation mode in my house. And so I'm a proud owner and really thinking about how we leverage these technologies in our region, especially in a region that have a lot of basements and garages and spaces in single family homes. and kind of thinking about, the possibility of moving forward. I would also be remiss if I didn't say that in our region, there's a lot of poverty. Pre-pandemic, we're looking at about 40% of our households in our region were at or below the federal poverty level. And we can only imagine how that has been exacerbated since 2019, right? And so when we are thinking about the possibilities and the future and what we are optimistic about in the Southeast, it is really deeply settled in. How do we make this transformation for our folks in our region who, making that purchase of any equipment is going to be a challenge, and what that type of programmatic approach looks like. We're fortunate that our states are all taking a jump at the rebate programs under the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we know that there will be some support there, though not enough to touch every household in need of that equipment upgrade. So, we have some of our utility programs in the Carolinas and Georgia and in Florida, from our investor-owned utilities that have heat pump water heater rebates and programs, which is just, incredible to see. And we're hopeful and hearing conversations of more utilities jumping into that conversation and what that might look like for them and their regulators. But I think what is most exciting in our region and the residential sector, I'll talk about the commercial sector later and some of our questions of our challenges. But in our residential sector, maybe in particular, we're seeing a lot of focus on what community looks like, right? I think, going to some statements just around, we have every single county in the Southeast, if you control for income, every single county for low income populations, on average, they are energy burdened, right? And so when we are thinking about the group of folks that we want to support, or need the most support from the system as at large, it is those folks, the folks that are in our more rural areas, or even in some of our more urban areas that are struggling with their housing stock. And so, really thinking about that, we're proud to be a regional navigator for the Buildings Upgrade Prize through the Department of Energy, where we have 10 teams working in and around what this looks like for transformation in existing buildings, going from single family construction to houses of worship and multifamily spaces, really thinking about daycare centers or other places that can be resilience hubs, and electric or heat pump water heating is a key component of that. And so as they are developing their programs and thinking about how workforce is integrated, especially in some of our more rural areas in Appalachia or in rural Alabama, rural Mississippi, it is really encouraging to see, real money and programming on the ground to chart, to tackle and create models that are not, necessarily going to stay where they are, right? They are replicable, they are scalable and can be used across the Southeast region. And so we're really excited about that. And I think is that wind across our backs. We see a lot of interest in the weatherization sector, obviously, as well, where it can be a little bit of a challenge for other equipment trade outs in that program and in some of our other low income programs. We see heat pump water heaters being an easy, we can easily do that. That's not a big issue. And so we see a lot of just interest and lack of opposition, which is always great when you're in our region in the Southeast. And I think mostly days like today with Heat Pump Water Heater Day only makes that even more exciting and even more attainable for folks in our region.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, it does feel very encouraging when you see people's interest in this and different programs that come up that are encouraging the adoption of a heat pump water heater. That is amazing. And thank you. And now I would like to call upon Joshua Greene from A.O. Smith to talk about what their plans are for the roadmap to 2040. I mean, they represent the manufacturing side, and how are you going to handle this tsunami?
Yes, there is that, Deepti, and thank you, and Joe. And we always start by thanking those who give us a platform in which to speak to heat pump water heaters, very dear to A.O. Smith's heart. And also would like to say that, transformation of the market, and I think the thematic on with transformers, I'm not sure which one of us, I'll give Andrew the Optimus Prime characterization as which transformer we are. But at the end of the day, it's something that A.O. Smith actually takes to heart. One of the things that we are celebrating at A.O. Smith is our 150-year anniversary this year. And just for perspective, that makes A.O. Smith older than Ford, Wells Fargo, and Levi Strauss. And we have transformed ourselves over that 150 years from a two-person machine shop in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, founded by two Smith brothers, to 12,000 people around the world, and S&P 500 company that is exclusively focused on water technology, both space heating and water treatment. So with that backdrop and the setup slides were wonderful, and certainly hearing from Andrew and Maggie, great panelists, and I'm just honored to be with them. We do have, from a manufacturer's standpoint, a step change in what we need to be doing, certainly, but also what's ahead for consumers, our customers, all across the value chain. And Deepti, when your slide where you set up what we're looking at just from a unit volume shift from what is approximately 4.5 million residential water heaters, electric water heaters that are sold annually in the United States of various sizes, obviously, to transforming that to approximately 3-ish million heat pump water heaters in the span of the next 5 years. That's a challenge for sure. One of the things that A.O. Smith has always done is stepped up to those challenges and seeing the opportunities that we have as a company, and more so the benefit that will come to our customers. So many manufacturers are getting ready for that change, manufacturing capacity buildup, tightening supply chains, because as you know, there are a lot of key components to heat pump technology that are still outside of North America, but some of the policies that certainly the Biden-Harris administration has put in place for nearshoring and getting more heat pump production, both finished goods and components here in the United States, I think will help with costs, amongst other things. So that's what we're doing, I think, as an industry at a macro level. We're starting to see some other new entrants come into the marketplace, and that's great. And I know a couple will be part of Heat Pump Water Heater Day today. We look forward to hearing from them, as well as some of our other colleagues with both residential and commercial applications. But with opportunity comes challenges. And we probably can get into that a little bit more in the Q&A. I think Maggie did a great job of queuing up some of those. And the hyper-regionality, certainly of water heating in the United States, and looking at grid impacts and where there is more electrification than others. And that's also something that, and I'll cue off what Andrew had teed up as well. As manufacturers, we're not only looking at regional, local, but we're looking at a national marketplace. And as we are transforming to a more electrified built environment for certainly space heating and water heating, amongst other applications, there are going to be regional differences. There are going to be grid differences. And when I don't mean the abstract grid in terms of generation profile per se, but for us, this is all about distribution, local distribution grids, to be precise. And that goes right into homes and buildings that are otherwise have the necessary infrastructure to electrify, and whatever those end uses may be. I think there are going to be some challenges on the commercial side with needing to have some hybrid systems and flexibility. But the residential side has wonderful upside to it. And one of the things that we're working on in California that, Andrew referenced, the California Heat Pump Partnership. I think our work with NEEP and SEEA and NEEA and a whole bunch of others in the alphabet soup and panoply of NGOs that do great work are going to be the communications campaigns, the education campaigns, contractor awareness training. How do we best communicate the value in certain circumstances of heat pump water heating in particular? That will be obviously our focus today. So in the abstract, those are the things that we're doing, and we're talking to our customers literally every week. We also have the advantage of talking to thousands of contractors in our network. And there is both excitement, but rightly so, there's some trepidation, right? Because we are, from the water heating perspective, that delta between what is commercially viable, feasible today. Remember, we're still waiting on Energy Star numbers for last year for heat pump water heaters of approximately probably 180, 190,000 units nationally. And getting that number up to 3 million, that's a challenge. But we're up to the task. I think our industry is up to the task. And so long as we're working in alignment with stakeholders, including the great ones we have on this panel, there's going to be a lot of opportunity and success. So with that, I'll just conclude my remarks there and look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, that's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of expectations from the industry now with all these new programs coming up. And yeah, I know you all of you touched upon your challenges a little bit, but I would like to delve a little bit more into what are these obstacles that stand in your way to achieving your 2040 goals for heat pump water heater market transformation. Commissioner McAllister, do you want to go first?
Well, sure. Well, great presentations. Thanks, Maggie, and thanks, Josh, for your leadership and all your efforts. Yeah, I think, this is absolutely an appropriate technology class, for where we need to go as a state, certainly in California, as a nation. Just given that electrification or the electric system is the backbone of our decarbonization journey. That's certainly how we see it in California. And just the inherent benefits of heat pump water heating just make all the sense in the world. In my view, there really are the market needs to really improve its offering in terms of sort of selling to the customer, explaining the benefits to the customer. There is some complexity relative to the status quo technologies, whether they are a gas water heater or gas tank or tankless or electric resistance. So there's some perforations, there's some installation kind of details that really need to be right in any given installation, and the workforce has to be there, and that supply chain is a bit different and needs to be really up to the task. And so that's an evolution, and certainly we'll get there. The first cost is sort of the immediate barrier, I think, for many people. So a like-for-like replacement is going to be more straightforward for most people, and that there is a first cost potentially involving some wiring, although there are some solutions to that, and a bit of additional plumbing, right? So those, in addition to the equipment itself. So I think both the equipment piece and the labor installation piece need to kind of trend downward and trend sort of more accessible towards many consumers, particularly as you were talking about, Maggie, where a lot of lower income, low mod income folks, we need them to adopt this technology if we're going to reach our goals. So we need to really make it adoptable, simply adoptable for them. So the first cost trend, I think as we get to scale, that will, move in the right direction. We're already seeing some of that. And then in California, we do have relatively pricey electricity. The good news about, so there is an operational cost potential concern, but the good news about heat pump water heaters is that they are so efficient that that tends to work itself out. So typically will not increase people's energy bills, because that's what our analysis is showing for the vast majority of the state. So I think really that first cost and that supply chain, really getting things streamlined, getting that sales down, and really getting enough experience so that people feel comfortable adopting the technology and seeing the benefits. That's sort of the one that I would highlight in the California context.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely understand. I think that's a problem nationwide. The first cost and the installation costs, they are typically higher than the cost of the equipment itself. So
Deepti, but I actually would just add I should add though that our equitable building decarbonization program and the HERA incentives that we've just rolled out with the federal money, a particular equitable building decarb, that is a low income focused. It's going to under-resourced communities, under-resourced, lower income families, and it is a direct install program. So it is a no first cost for the customer. So that's a kind of a really a way to jack into the market and get some scale with a direct install program, focusing on the folks that need it the most, and then get that experience, move up market into, the tax credit and appliance rebate realm where you're not covering the 100% of the cost, but a big chunk of the cost, and then moving further up market from there with financing options and the like. So I think, the staged approach where we're offering the right package to the people, appropriate to the folks and their income and their location, that strategy is going to work over time and really build the market.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Maggie, what are the challenges that you face? I know there are a lot more challenges in your region, and you did touch upon
that there weren't, right? Like when I tell people all the time that if I had even I'll take a nickel for every time someone's like, but the climate's perfect. Right? Like I could buy heat pump water heaters for everyone. No, I think some of the issues and challenges that Commissioner McAllister brought up are paralleled in the South. And I think that is a really critical piece of this conversation, to note that it's not just one state, that it is a national phenomenon, and that is something that is occurring. I'll also say, I think that in our region, I mentioned the commercial piece. I was looking with Joe a couple of weeks ago at some commercial data in the Southeast, and I think the number of heat pump water heater systems for commercial buildings in our region is closer to zero than not, right? And I think it gives us a big opportunity to think about what that type of program and process development looks like, right, for the commercial sector. It's one that is not as tapped into in our region, and I think it's something that we need to pay more attention to. We obviously have plenty of challenges in the residential sector, and cost is one of them. But I think that the big piece of the region is thinking about another part of the building stock, and even thinking about what the options look like in the commercial sector. We work, as I mentioned, in the U.S. islands, and also thinking about multi-generational homes. We are working with Shifted Energy as one of our buildings upgrade prize teams in Hawaii, and one of the things that they've noted for a long time in their work is that in a lot of Native Hawaiian households, they're multi-generational, and you actually need commercial scale equipment to support actually having enough hot water for the folks who live in homes. And I think that is the considerations of what hot water usage looks like is not necessarily, there's not a quote unquote normal for a lot of folks, especially as we are having aging populations and our residential housing stocks becoming more multi-generational. Kind of really thinking about how these things stack together, right, is important. I'll also note, I think that the education is important, and I know we're going to talk about workforce in a moment, but we have done quite a few residential energy code field studies across the Southeast, and we collect additional data there. There's some really important energy code data that's collected in those, but we have our data collectors kind of look at some additional pieces of what they're finding in homes. And we recently did a study in South Carolina, collecting data over the last year, and we got our preliminary data. Like this is, but statistically significant. And there were 0 heat pump water heaters collected in new construction, and noted in the state of South Carolina. That's not to say they're not there, right? But on a statistical sampling process, like there were none found. And in fact, like most of those were electric, but we also had a lot of gas tankless. And I think that, people's options for having affordable or more affordable options for on-demand hot water is it's something that we have to pay attention to in the market of behavior, right? Which is really critical. The last thing I'll say is we can be a squeaky wheel, and we should continue to be about people buying this equipment upon failure. And when folks buy equipment upon failure, especially folks who are more low income, they turn to programs and process to get things through payday loans and through leases, and looking at some of the equipment and other furniture lease sellers, right? The rent to own market, and we have to really evaluate, like, what does that mean for equitable access to hot water, and continued access to hot water. And conversations about first cost are important, but what are the opportunities for people to actually purchase, or have that equipment come into their dwelling? And I think that that's a really important consideration as well, and something that I think we need a lot more thinking, a lot more folks kind of coming around and really brain trusting. And AWHI has been a great place for that, and our equity working groups and our Southeast working groups and places like that. But I think those are some of the bigger considerations that we're up against, and kind of starting to live out what the data is telling us, and how we might be able to look at that transformation going forward.
Yep. Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, there is a big role that trust transfer plays in this industry, especially from contractor to the customer. And I know we're going to touch upon the workforce next, but yeah, like that's I think going to play a big role in transformation. And Joshua, what do you think are the obstacles for as a manufacturer in this industry that are going to be that are standing in your way for market transformation?
Sure. And thanks. And I'm going to pick up a little bit on some of the themes that Maggie said, and keeping with our thematic today. What is going to be the energon, right, that we are going to need moving forward? Those of you who follow Transformers know exactly what I just said. So that's going to be economics. The economics to consumers, the economics to manufacturers, the economics to contractors and installers. What is that value proposition? I think we all can agree that heat pump water heaters in the installed base in your home is going to save you money. The question is how much, right? And that's where we need our friends in the utility community, and we'll shout out to our friends in the Northeast and Massachusetts, to Grid and others, and we're seeing the beginnings of rate reform and getting a rate that incentivizes heat pump installation. We need that all over the country, to be honest about it and candid. We also need to make sure that contractors and installers are seeing the economic value of installing heat pump equipment, space heating, water heating, and that it will help their businesses and help their customers. And then we also, on the manufacturing side, I think from an OEM perspective, we are going to be doing, certainly from A.O. Smith, but I will say this for many of my peers, we will be supplying the market. There's not going to be a shortage of heat pump water heaters, generally speaking. So the market is going to be there from an OEM perspective. What we need to focus our attention on are those daily kind of blocking and tackling. And that is knowing that we're an 85% replacement market business, and that in most homes, there is a one cold shower rule. Not in my home, it's 0, but that's what we're up against. And therefore, proactive replacement and proactive campaigns goes back to the economics, the consumer awareness. So I think from an OEM perspective, those are some of the key items. The other, and I'll conclude with here, is to the best of our ability, and our friends at the CEC, and Andrew and we are friends at the CEC, amongst other regulatory bodies, if we can work towards better alignment, and looking at this from a national marketplace, I know everyone has their jurisdictional prerogatives, granted, and rather not have a bespoke kind of regulatory regime, that will help with costs, believe it or not, because the more products that we can get installed, the more contractors that we get enrolled, and they're not having to worry about different types of regulatory regimes, those installation costs will come down. And we're all working towards manufacturing processes that will get some of our costs down. But at the end of the day, that's where we need to go. But some of these blocking and tackling and partnerships, rate reform, economics, those are going to be important moving forward.
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, amazing list of I really like how you know what your challenges are and you have a plan to tackle them. This is amazing. And then when it comes to workforce, it's strength in numbers. So what are your plans to prepare the workforce for this challenge? Commissioner McAllister. Yeah. Oh,
I would actually maybe suggest, Josh, that you go first on that one.
sure,
And I
yes.
can follow you. Yeah.
Go for it.
Sure. No, thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
So from a workforce perspective, and we've had a lot of conversations about workforce, certainly with NEEP and SEEA, CEC, and many others. So at the macro level and working with our friends at the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association, Hardy, ACA, and many others, over the next decade, there certainly will be a net growth of the trades, whether it's plumbing, electricians, other installers, for sure, because the economy is going to continue to grow. I know that's going to be settled maybe next month. We'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, there's going to be economic opportunity, and at the same time, there are going to be contractors that have not, and this is more so on the plumbing side. And it's not a criticism, it's just where we have been historically in the installed base, of getting more education and awareness around heat pump technology and really around refrigerants and compressors. And we're seeing every single week more contractors getting involved in heat pump sales, for sure. And we're going to continue to do that as A.O. Smith. My brethren do that under the auspices of the Energy Star Manufacturers Action Council, where we go around the country and do training on heat pump water heating, brand agnostic, and that has to continue. And that's just been a great partnership. But again, it goes back to a thematic of economics. I mean, one of the prime and if not primary questions that we get when we're doing our contractor training on our new heat pump water heating products, the economics of the consumer. How best do I communicate this moving forward? And then product wise, what are the warranties going to be? What is the series of questions, and how can you, A.O. Smith, best prepare me to answer those consumer questions when they come up? And then finally, look, at the end of the day, it's been our experience over 150 years that when contractors and installers see an economic opportunity, and mostly on their small businesses, right, they will respond accordingly. Demand is a great economic incentive to hire and train people. So I think a lot of these things will happen with market forces, but by the same time, let's be sure that we're working together and promote as much training as we can.
Josh, I really appreciate all of those answers and agree. And the Heat Pump Partnership, I think, is a great forum to really surface these industry needs for standardization and sort of make sure that we're not tripping over jurisdictional issues and sort of like making the perfect the enemy of the good. Totally agree with that. And really hopeful that conversation can help get that sort of alignment. In California, our policy for up until relatively recently, over decades, was focused on extending the gas grid, right? So, and then in the building code, we had several cycles where the most efficient technology, the sort of the baseline technology in the standard design of a home was a gas tankless water heater. And so, we have to kind of unwind that now that we have better technologies that are more efficient and much lower emissions. and first and foremost, heat pump water heaters. And so that sort of transformation, not all the homes were even built with a cabinet that has room for a tank in it, right? And so those sorts of issues are, I think, in large, they're not totally unique to California, but it's different than, say, the Southeast, right? We tend to have dry, and we don't have like as many condensation problems, and so that's a difference with our buildings. And so I think there are these regional differences. But fundamentally, I think your point about the fact that the vast majority of this market is replace on burnout, and that people want their hot water, that really points to having to have that tank or that heat pump water heater on the truck, ready to go, put it in there, know what to do, have it really be plug and chug, and having that be just a mainline to market scale. And even have it packed, it's not only going to be on the truck, the installer has to be super comfortable with it, super comfortable with selling it. Maybe they even need to partner it with a finance solution in many cases. Maybe there's an on-bill repayment or another finance solution that they bring, as part of the package. And they need to be very comfortable. And it needs to be a robust offering, right? It can't be vaporware. It's got to be real. And it has to be something they could get the customer comfortable with and sell it so they can actually do that installation. And we also have the responsibility to work with the local governments and the building departments to make sure that they have the wherewithal and the possibilities to actually permit and then close the permits out efficiently on these. Every water heater replacement is supposed to get a permit, right? It's subject to the building code. So often it doesn't happen. And so I think there are a number of sort of barriers or sort of points in that installation chain, that supply chain to the customer, to the end user, that not all of them, or even most of them, are unique to this particular device, like heat pump water heaters or water heaters at all. Permitting is an ongoing concern in a bunch of different areas, so it's not unique to this. But it does mean that we need to be more, I think, proactive in solving these historical barriers so that we can really smooth out the path to scale for heat pump water heaters. And we're doing it. And I think these partnerships we're building are going to solve these problems. Maybe I'm naturally optimistic, but I really do see that we are moving, in the arc of history, we're moving in the right direction. And I think the time has come for these solutions, and more people are realizing it. So I do think that scale is going to build both driven by policy, but also organically as people see the benefits.
Yeah, and I think all of that is obviously very true for the Southeast, and we're grateful to be in partnership with so many folks in other regions and learning and those spaces as well. I will add on the workforce component. I will go back to kind of the drum that I've been beating, and we at SEEA have been beating for a long time in our region, is also looking at who is this workforce. We know that there are gaps. We know we need more folks, but who are they? Where do they live? What is their background? Who are their communities, right? Because we know that it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and call someone that or your pastor's kid's cousin, or the folks who are in your community, in your circles, when something goes wrong in your home or with equipment. I think that there's this other piece of not just adding folks to the workforce, but looking at who we are intentionally reaching out to and supporting as they are joining our workforce, or upskilling them in and around this technology and others. And we are really paying deep attention to where we are seeing manufacturers and utility programs and state programs that we see, here's what our goal is. It's like, okay, well, let's drill down a little bit more and see which communities are we talking about, and then how can we think about those communities at a level that is, how are we enabling the workforce training and development and resourcing for folks in those communities to have access to all of these resources and become kind of the champions around this technology. Too often we see folks who buy equipment on Facebook Marketplace, right? Like I don't know if you all see those types of things, and we want to make sure that things are permitted and we're capturing data, that's not always the reality for folks. And so how do we make sure that there are reputable, trained, and excited members of our workforce in every single community throughout the region? So when something like that does happen, there's someone in the community that can support, right, the access to resources, to access to whatever that installation looks like, and or maybe advice of like, hey, let's actually go look and see what we've got at this store or that store, what we have on our truck, somewhere else. I do think that, with our states taking advantage of the training for residential contractors, the truck grants will be really big for the region. And I know heat pump water heaters are a big part of that. I think as we're digging into these pieces, it's really incumbent on us to, as we're developing programs and kind of thinking about how we support our workforce, we also ask ourselves who within that workforce we are supporting and expanding it to, so that we have training materials and resources in multiple languages, that we have information, at scale that is supportive for folks to have conversations at all income levels that make the why make sense beyond carbon and kilowatt hours. While that might be important to you, that may not be the driving factor for the behavioral change within other parts of the market. And so how do we make that, usable and resourceful, and how are we combating myths and really equipping folks who are in our workforce and who were trying to get into our workforce to be in a space where they can really be champions. And then when they are champions, they are proven right? That the equipment is doing all of the things that we say that it's going to do, and allowing them to continue to be champions, which I think is encouraging as we're moving more and more forward in this space.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. This was a great panel. I'm just realizing that we blew through our time, and
You guys did
I don't know,
amazing. Yeah, that was good.
Joe appeared. So I would request you to please take a look at the Q&A. If you're able to answer those questions individually, then please go ahead and do that. And Joe, I'm going to hand over to you. Happy Heat Pump Water Heater Day once again. Thank you all for a great
Thanks,
session.
everybody.
Thanks, Deepti. Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Commissioner
Deepti.
McAllister. Thanks so much, Maggie and Josh. Really great to have you all and provide those perspectives on what are the driving forces in market transformation, what are the obstacles, and what do we need to do to train our workforce and get them ready for this. So thank you for those amazing perspectives. We greatly appreciate it. So we're still doing well in time because we have a little break built in. This will be just a 2-minute break. We'll play some fun music, but we'll be back at 9:20 Pacific, 12:20 Eastern. See you then.